Good morning, hello and welcome. Today we're checking out the Ford Ranger, and this is here in its 2.2 XLS variant, so that's a lot lower than the one I tested 5 years ago. Yes, it's been 5 years since I've driven a Ranger, and the last time I drove one was a pretty beefy one. It was a 3.2 Wild Track. So what's different? Well, this one's a lot cheaper. That one's now about 165 to 170,000 dirhams. This one's about 70,000 dirhams with VAT. So obviously you're losing something. Well, you're losing the 5-cylinder engine, and what you are getting is a 2.2 litre 4-cylinder engine, which sounds an awful lot like the one they used to put in the old Defender. Power drops a bit from 200 horsepower to about 160 horsepower, but really that's not a huge drop what you're considering, honestly. 6-speed auto as always, and this one is available in this nice 4x4 high rider spec, which means it is a lifted car, so obviously it has better ground clearance, better approach and departure angles, and still a reasonable amount of kit. But what has Ford taken out to hit that 70,000 dirham price point? Let's find out. And to be honest, I'm quite curious about this car because you got lots of interest in dual cab pickups now around the world, whether it's the Suzuki D-Max, the Toyota Hilux, the now departed Mercedes X-Class. There are a lot of interest in these kinds of cars. Can this car compete with the newly released Hilux Adventure? Well, only one way to find out. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the exterior, but you've already seen the Wild Track video, I hope, so you know what to expect. Pretty much the standard updated PX2, that's the model classification for this Ranger. Yeah, it's got the nice sort of hexagonal grille up front, quite a smart looking, handsome, dare I say it, brute. You've got fog lights, which is a nice touch. You've got 16-inch wheels, and they're wrapped in actually really nice tires. Michelin Cross Contact LX, so it's sort of somewhere between a highway terrain and an all-terrain. Quite a good, strong tire, and obviously nobody will ever put Continentals on this car ever again. The only other identifying factor is got a badge down here which says 2.26 auto. That's quite handy. You know exactly what engine you're getting. Other than that, it looks pretty much like a work pickup from the rest of the body. If you look here, oh yeah, well, there is a bit of bling. You get a chrome cap for the mirror. Otherwise, the only other bit of chrome here is this roll bar on the top, which is nice. I don't think it'll actually survive if the car gets rolled, but hey ho, can't complain. It's a bit of bling. Other than that, we've got this very aggressive toe thing down here. I'm not sure what that does actually. I think it must be some sort of toe hook. You've got actual bed liner on the bed, which I believe is a 5-foot bed. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's not a huge bed. And you've got these hooks down here for tie downs, which are apparently, I'm not sure if they're necessarily available in every other country. So for some reason we get these toe hooks down here because people like to tow things down, assuming you're doing work in Dera. Yeah, no damn tailgate here, but reasonably solid. What I'd like to see is somewhere to keep your beverages. Like the F-150 set a little cutout here to keep your beverages. Other than that, pretty much what you would expect from a Ranger. Alright, let's see what the rear passengers get up to. I imagine it's nothing very exciting. So what's it like in the back of the Ford Ranger pickup? Well, it's a bit like in a commercial vehicle. The backrest is really upright. You sort of sit like you've got to hold your hard hat in your hands. There's good leg room, a nice scalloped out seat, so you obviously get a little bit of extra leg room. You get a nice armrest. It's a vinyl armrest. The seat back is low, so it doesn't give you quite enough thigh support. There is nothing back here, and I mean nothing. There's no AC vents. There's a 12-volt USB socket, which is a bit sad. But unlike the Nissan Sunny, this does have an armrest. And it does have 2 cup holders. But other than that, just about okay. But it's a dual cab pickup. I'll tell you one thing, it's more comfortable than being in the back of a Nissan Sunny. And I've got better headroom than in the back of a Nissan Sunny. And it's the same price as okay, you see where I'm going with this. Buy this instead of a Nissan Sunny. So what's the interior of the Ranger like? Well, don't expect anything as nice as the Wild Track interior. It is pretty cheap and nasty lower end plastics, and you're very scratchy. There is a bit of a Tempset texture, but honestly it's not great. You can tell that this is a vehicle designed basically 10 years ago. It's got the same steering wheel as before. It's actually quite a nice steering wheel. It's nice to hold. Just really, really nice vehicle to hold. And you've got, of course, volume controls and cruise control. You don't get the nice premium digital cluster that you get on the Wild Track, although I like this one a bit better. It's very simple, old school, and easy to understand. If you're wondering what the screens are, you've got Trip Computer 2, I'm just going to do Trip Computer right now. And that's a quite nice summary screen. And then if you go to the left, he says Trip Computer 2, same thing, fuel economy. So not I would describe as the last word in options. But hey ho, it's a Ranger, it's not an F-150. Oh, don't look at that for a second. That is 2 cup holders. You've got a little cubby bin here with space for pens. You've got a pretty deep box down here, but no auxiliary USBs in it. 6-speed auto with a little leather gaiter, quite like it. Proper 4-wheel drive here, 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive, and a low range box. You've got traction control, which turns all the way off. A rear diff lock, how cool is that? Rear diff lock and hill descent. So reasonable systems for off-roading. So basically the same stuff you get in a wild track. Of course the engine isn't the same, but as you'll see, that's not so much of a problem. You've got single zone, sorry, no, it's just got fan. You've got AC, that's it. That's literally it. It's not a bad AC, by the way. You've also got the world's smallest radio screen. Oh my god, this is embarrassing. Like, it is a color screen. It does have, let me see that again. It is actually a proper color screen. But boy, oh boy, we're not talking about a lot of functions, are we? Forget about CarPlay, that's for sure. Oh, and in case you're wondering, it is have a reversing camera as well, but it's postage stamp size. Like, I think this is something you want to upgrade straight away. But it's functional. It's just not great. All right, let's get the Ranger out on the road. So it's a bit of a curious thing, this Ford Ranger. I mean, what do I make of it? Now, the old Wildtrak was a really nice car, but also it was also really well priced. It was like 115,000. I might be remembering this wrong, but nowadays, for some inexplicable reason, it shot up to 160,000 dirhams, and that is not where that car should be at all. At 115, it was kind of a no-brainer. You got a nice interior, reasonable amount of options, pretty comfortable, some really snazzy seats with some like wetsuit fabric, and a good 3.2 diesel engine. Now it's become a lot more expensive, and it's competing against things like a base Wrangler. Now, granted, it drives really well. These Rangers have always driven really well. They're punched above their weight. They don't feel like commercial vehicles, but I don't know if that's where these cars should be. This one sort of replaces where the Wildtrak was, the XLS. And on first glance, it's a little cynical again. You've got a really cheap interior, really plasticky feeling steering wheel. The AC is just lacking in options. It's literally an AC. The stereo is literally a stereo. There's nothing else. Forget CarPlay. There's a reversing camera. There's stability control. There's ABS. But that's really about it. And you're charging not that much money. It's 70,000 dirhams. So I guess it kind of gets away with it. Plus, you can get with the manual, which you couldn't get with the 3.2. Although in other markets, you can get the 3.2 with the manual. Now, the automatic is good. The Ford 6-speed has always been a good gearbox, but I would like a manual. I couldn't see why I wouldn't want a manual. So what's it like to drive? Does 70,000 dirhams feel very cheap? Well, I'll tell you what. It's got good pickup off the line. The 280 foot-pounds of torque is more than a Wrangler makes, and it's much lower in the rev range. 160 horsepower, so it's only 40-something down on the 3.2. It makes you wonder what the 3.2 exactly is lacking. Plus, it handles really well. It's got old school, I think this is hydraulic steering. I'm not sure. I think it's hydraulic because it feels quite heavy. It's a decent steering. It's pretty good steering, braking. The car feels very nimble. It feels like a Ford. It feels like it's got really good grippy handling, and the nose goes exactly where you want it to. I like it. It's got just the right amount of turn in, the right amount of body roll. The car takes a set. The ride is really good on these 16-inch wheels. Thinking about this, it actually makes more sense as a base for modification. Like, I would take this and go, how do I make an off-road desert car, overland car out of it? The problem is, if you had a significant other, they would be really turned off by this interior. Let's see what it's like on the almighty Rattle Test. Slides around a bit. On the Rattle Test, it's top class. It's like a Range Rover. The ride of this car is so good. It's got parabolic springs, which basically means it gets you a better ride on and off-road. I've driven it briefly off-road, and I'll tell you what, it's pretty good. The diesel just means that you don't have to deflate. This car just pushes itself through the sand absolutely effortlessly. And the car is not heavy as well. So the 2.2 is actually fine. And in the corners, I've taken this thing in the corners on big bridges at up to 120. So it's actually pretty good. I'm a little surprised because I thought that this being such a cheap and cheerful car would be a cheap and miserable experience. But like the Wildtrak, it's so much better. I drove a Hilux recently, not the new Adventure, just the basic Hilux with the 2.7 to get comfortable. And you know what? It felt like a pickup. It had really, really nice interior, much better looking interior than this. But to drive, it was a pickup. It just wasn't refined. It wasn't smooth. It wasn't particularly comfortable. The ride on this is really good. You know, sorry, look at my phone. I adjust a few things and I'm on a straight bit, so I'm fine. So the Hilux was just a pickup. I drove an Isuzu D-Max. I know Australians love D-Maxes. It's a pickup. Horrible sounding engine. Very powerful engine. 3-litre diesel. Very powerful. And I think there was a V6. I might be wrong. But this car, even the refinement isn't that bad. You can't hear that telltale diesel clatter. If you really lay into the throttle, you'll hear it. Otherwise, it's not bad. You could live with this every single day. It's not fast. 160 horsepower isn't fast. But the 6-speed is good. The changes are crisp. The seating position is... yeah. So the seating position is good, but my legs are just that 1 inch too long. So I can't get my legs to feel comfortable, and it doesn't have a telescoping steering wheel. So if I could sit a little further back, I would be great. But I can't do that. The refinement's good. The noise level is actually pretty good. On the highway, I'm doing 120. Nothing at all. Pretty easy to live with. I would dare say that this 2.2 diesel engine is quieter than my Raptor. It's not bad in here. There's no tire noise. There's a little bit of wind noise. No engine noise. A little bit hint of diesel, but not much. You would live with this car. Now granted, again, your wife or boyfriend or whatever might throw you out if you come back home with the Ranger, because it's really not very sexy. But it is a very practical car. And for the kind of off-roading most people do, it'll actually do really well. So if you're thinking, I need a cheap car to get around that is capable, the Ranger makes a lot of sense. Now, I'd still look at a second-hand Wildtrak because the interior is much nicer. I mean, and the ride is just as good, and the power is a little bit better, etc. And it just looks a nicer car. But this one, if you're treating it as a base for modification, bigger lift, bigger tires, proper shocks, maybe a bumper, probably don't need it, and you're good. Nice car. So my thoughts are, the range is surprisingly decent. I don't know if I would buy it. I still like off-road cars that are a little fancy. I look into something second-hand with more options. But if I was on a budget, this is a good off-road car. Now, as a daily lifestyle car, it's no Jeep Gladiator because that has so much sex appeal. But to drive on road is actually better than the Jeep Gladiator. How's that for a surprising conclusion? Anyway, thanks for watching. This is Imtishan. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, message me, DM me, and follow us on Instagram. When I say us, it's just me. It's just me. See you next time. Turn off indicator. Indicator's off.